Hi everyone, my name is Tracy Miles, and this is our second video in our 4-video series. Today I'm going to talk about what we call the wisdom model. At Energy Tap, we believe that you have a wisdom within you. And when we begin to explore this together, there's a process that we go through that helps you to find and tap into this wisdom that we believe every single human has within them. Now, many people will define wisdom as knowledge. And you will be able, if you type wisdom into Google, what you'll get is many memes that say that wisdom is knowledge equaled with experience. And when we have knowledge and experience, then we have what's called wisdom. That's true. And you know, as an older woman, I can say that I have experienced many times in my life that I received wisdom from an experience that I had. What we are talking about is something that's just slightly a bit different than that. Wisdom is more the way that we define it and the way that we work with you around this part of yourself is that wisdom is more like the essence of you, the self. Freud referred to this as id. Many people will say the self. We just use the language of wisdom. There's a woman named Marsha Linehan. She is the creator of dialectical behavior therapy, referred to as DBT, and she calls it wise mind. So when you come to us for therapy, I'm not your wisdom. I don't live within you. I don't have your experiences. So I can guide and I can advise and you can consult with me and ask for what I think about something. But I feel that it's much more powerful if I just turn you towards this part of yourself, because that part of you is way more experienced in what's going on within you. So that's our primary goal, is to make, some people don't believe that they have this part of them. And that happens for all kinds of reasons. You may have history, trauma. You may have at one time thought that this part existed within you, and then somewhere along the way you lost it. But we believe it's there. So our goal is always to turn you toward it. And another thing that we believe here is that the best relationship you're ever going to have is the one that you're having with yourself. And if we don't have a solid, grounded relationship with ourselves, then every other relationship in our life is going to be impacted by that fact. So our goal is to help you move toward, be in relationship with what I believe is the most powerful part of you, which is your wisdom. Now, there is a science to this. Marsha Linehan, who I mentioned earlier, who's the creator of dialectical behavior therapy, she put together a model that helps people to find this part of themselves. I just present it a little differently than Marsha presents it. We'll do that next. I'm gonna get up and use the whiteboard, and I'll give you some of the science behind your wisdom. Okay, so I'm going to show you how the wisdom model works for us. So you are made up of 2 parts. Well, I think you're made up of way more than 2. However, we're going to focus on first, you have a body, okay? You have a brain, your body houses emotions. And emotions are, they're actually hot. So when we become emotional, there's a physiological occurrence that happens in the body which creates a temperature change. So when you become angry, your body will begin to heat up, your face will become flush, there will be physiological occurrences that happen. So when we have emotions in the body, our temperature changes, and that temperature is hot. The other thing about emotions is that they are sensations. So when we're having an emotional response to our environment, we experience sensation in our bodies, and we call those feelings, right? That's how we communicate these sensations in our bodies. Then, when we experience those feelings, we label them with an emotion. Emotions are also irrational sometimes, okay? So we can all agree that our emotions can come out of nowhere sometimes, right? They are usually connected to something that's occurring in the system, but they can be irrational. They are also either justified or they're understandable. So, how that works is present and past. So, here's an example. If I walked into my office on Monday morning and I opened the door and there was an anaconda on the floor, I'm going to scream my head off. I'm going to go running down the hall. I'm going to say, Nick, there's a snake in the office. I'm going to lose my mind. And I'm going to ask Nick to go in there and get the snake, right? That's a justified response to the fact that there's an anaconda on the floor. Now, if I come in on Friday and I stand out in the hallway and I start like, I'm not going in there. I can't go in there. And Nick's saying, it's not there, Tracy. I'm like, no, I'm not going in there. I'm going to lose my mind. It's understandable that I wouldn't want to go in there because I have a history in that room with an anaconda. So when we experience these sensations, it's important that we learn how to differentiate between what is understandable within my history and what is justified within the moment that I'm standing in. Now, where our bodies become problematic is the window of tolerance, which I presented in the first video. So if you haven't seen that video, go watch it because this will make more sense, okay? So where it becomes problematic in the body is within our central nervous system. So that window I talked about, right? That window of tolerance. When we leave our window of tolerance, our central nervous system kicks up and we will begin to become very irrational, especially if we are responding to something that's understandable, but it's not justified to the people around us. We will look like we are very irrational if we're in that hyper aroused state, or we'll look like we're completely shut down if we're in that hypo arousal state. Okay, so that's how your body works in terms of emotions. Okay, so then we have our brain, and our brain houses our mind, and it is cold. So what that means is if I am very engaged, let's say I'm writing a proposal for someone and I'm very engaged in a task and I'm very heady about what I'm doing, you know, I have lots of data and I'm going through data. If you tested my extremities, they would be a bit colder than the rest of my body because I am very engaged in my mind and I'm not really paying attention to anything that's going on in my body. So there's no heating up, but the temperature is cold. The other thing that happens in the mind, so the mind is rational, okay? This is where our ability to rationalize something lives in our mind. Now, sensations of the mind, so sensations of the body are feeling, sensations of the mind are actually thought. So thoughts that you have are sensations. Now, most people kind of like, what? If you were a Tibetan monk and you were meditating for 16 hours a day, you would begin to be able to feel the sensations of your thoughts. I've only had it happen once in my lifetime, and I was in a sensory deprivation tank, and I felt something happening in my head. And I remember thinking, oh, that must be my thoughts. It was very exciting. It's only ever happened once. Most people don't feel their thoughts. Your mind places meaning on everything, even when it might mean nothing, okay? Because if we can find meaning and it makes sense, then of course we place meaning on something. But if something is confusing, we will search for meaning and place it on to something. So your mind places meaning on everything. It also reasons. So many people will have sensations in their body and they will say, why am I feeling that way? And immediately they go up into their head and they're looking for a reason. So the why of it can become problematic in our mind. The last thing about our thoughts are that our mind loves to problem solve. It also loves a good task. So sometimes when we are quite lit in our central nervous system and our body is very lit up, giving your mind a good task will be helpful for you. And we help you to create tasks for the body that help to regulate the mind and the body together. But I'll talk about that later. Now, where the mind can become problematic for us is that it will take us to the past or the future. You see, our body can't do that. Our body can't go to the past and it can't go to the future. Our body is the only thing that's standing in the present. But I can be standing in the present and my mind will wander off into the past, or it will wander off into the future, and that becomes problematic in the experience of the present moment. So what is problematic, or actually before I go to the there's function in these two things though, right? Because the past is our teacher. That's really the only function that the past has for us, is it teaches us. So that is functional, right? I only put my hand on a hot stove once, right? I only eat bittersweet chocolate once because it tastes disgusting. So that's how the past is supportive, okay? The future is creative. It's how we plan. And the future is where our imagination goes, right? So it's very important for function. So I think about this in terms of, somebody at Mac or Apple, somebody said, we should take that thing off the desk and put it in people's hands. And immediately everybody's mind starts to go, yeah, how can we do that, right? So that's where the future is very functional for us because it allows us to create. Now, this is where it can become very problematic for us. The past is riddled with should. I should have done this. I should have said that. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't, so shoulda, woulda, coulda. Our mind will create all of these thoughts in relationship to what we should have done. Now, again, if we are using it in a functional way and we look at what we would have liked to have done, then it becomes a teacher. But most people are not actually using their mind in that way. They are beating themselves up with shoulds, what they should have done. And when we go to should, we will light up shame in our bodies. That becomes problematic. Now, and it may also be guilt. And I'm not saying that you don't ever look back and explore what could have happened or even feel guilt, right? You may feel guilt about something. That's healthy. We have lots of healthy feelings. But when we go to our shame and we beat ourselves up with all of these shoulds and keep ourselves awake at night going over what should have happened, that's really problematic for us. In the future, most people are using what if. What if this happens? What if that happens? And then when we do that, it lights up fear in the body. So what if the plane crashes, right? What if a truck comes flying through the window? What if I lose my child? What if I don't pass that grade? What if I get fired? Most people are using what if in a fear-based way. I would say, most people are not waking up and saying, what if today's the day I win the lottery, right? We are not using it in that way. So it becomes problematic in the system that is us. Now, I mentioned Marsha Linehan earlier. So Marsha presents this exact same model, but she uses a bit different language. So she uses rational mind and emotion mind. So if you typed in dialectical behavior therapy, that's what you would see come up. So a lot of what I'm presenting here comes from Marsha Linehan, and I've just added a couple of different things that she doesn't necessarily present. So here is where wisdom lives. It is the mind and body connection. Okay, so this is wisdom. Now, here in our body, when our central nervous system kicks up, like I said in the window of tolerance, you have attach, which is vulnerability, flight, which is fear, fight, which is anger, freeze, which is anxiety, and then submit, which is shame. And when our central nervous system kicks up and we leave that window of tolerance, we pass that 5. And see, in our window of tolerance, wisdom lives in the window. It's our brain and body connection when we're in the window. But when we get lit up, this is the language that I use, I'll say I'm lit. When I get lit, I've left my window and my brain and body have disconnected, metaphorically disconnected from each other, because now I'm going into survival mode, which means I'm going to be defensive. So if I am able to stay within my window and keep my mind and my body connected, I will find the wisdom that I need to support myself. So wisdom is intuition. This is the language that we use when we're talking about wisdom. Now, here's the thing. Most of us are conditioned out of our wisdom when we're children, because our grown-ups believe that it is their job to impart their wisdom upon the child. And I believe that the wisdom already exists within the child. We have to grow that up from the child. So what parents inadvertently do is they erase this. Now, the thing about that is, and why I don't erase this completely, is that they don't have the power to actually erase it completely. It's always going to be there. So we do this in all kinds of funky ways. I was driving down to Florida with my girlfriend. I was in the driver's seat. She was in the passenger seat. Her 3-year-old daughter was in the back seat with my 15-year-old niece. And my girlfriend says to her 3-year-old daughter, "Do you want a sandwich?" Her daughter says, "No, Mama, I'm fine." And within seconds, my girlfriend leans over, she opens the cooler, she takes out a sandwich, and she hands it to her daughter. The thing that's problematic about that is she's basically sending the message to that little body that don't listen to that, listen to me. Here, eat this. So parents have this irrational fear that their children will starve. Children will eat when they're hungry if we teach them to listen. Now, I have had I wouldn't say arguments, I have had challenges around this statement, because parents will say, well, it's a lot easier if my children are on a schedule. I agree. I definitely agree. And it will take away their intuitive ability to listen to their own bodies. Okay? Another way that we will condition people out of their intuition is that we teach them to be worried about what people think of them. I was in a grocery store and there was a man walking towards me, and I could see he was conversing with there was a little boy in the buggy, and he's conversing with the little boy. I don't hear anything that they're conversing about. But as I walked by, I heard the dad say, "No, what will the neighbors think?" And, I get that, because that is a message that we send to our children over and over and over and over again, that they need to be worried about what other people think. And that conditions them out of their own sense of well-being. And the last way that I kind of talk about this is that, I have lots of ways to talk about this, but we also have a habit of denying things to our children. We think that we're protecting them. So a story that I tell is that little Bobby's in the living room and he's playing with a puzzle, and mom and dad are in the kitchen and they're getting pretty heated about some financial stuff, right? Dad is like, "You have no common sense. You're always spending money." And she's slamming the cupboards. And little Bobby's sitting there and he thinks, "I think they're fighting." So little Bobby gets up and he goes in the kitchen and he says, "Are you guys fighting?" And they both look down and they say, "No, Bobby, we're not fighting." Instead of, "Yes, Bobby, we're fighting." And because people argue and it's okay, you and Joey argue all the time and it's annoying. And yeah, we're annoying, we get that, but it's got nothing to do with you. So then, see, Bobby walks away intact because his little voice told him that his parents were fighting. And so when we tell Bobby or we deny Bobby's reality to him, we condition him out of listening to that, because now he has to make a decision. What am I going to listen to here? What I believe is true, or these two people who are basically my gods, who I see as they hold more information than he does. So he questions himself, and then he is in a position of having to decide. But if you just validate what your children see, you will grow your wisdom from them, and that intuition grows strong, and they believe in themselves. The other thing, what we want to do is help you to reestablish that and begin to trust and follow it. Most people know what gut feelings are. I don't really need to explain that. Although I do have a story. My sister was sitting at a stoplight, and her family was in the car, and there were some vehicles behind her, and she says that this feeling comes over her, and the light turns green, and her husband says, "Go." And the kids are like, "Go, Mama, go." And she is frozen. She can't go. And she said it was like probably seconds that this whole thing unfolded, and a transport truck went flying through the intersection. And so we all know, if you drive, you know what this means. Many people can tell you stories of a gut feeling while they were driving. This is our wisdom talking to us. Your wisdom is also deep down. Now, this language comes from a gentleman named Kyle Cease. I follow him on YouTube. He's like a motivational speaker. I ask people while I'm presenting this to them, have you ever said, or have you ever heard somebody else say, "Deep down, I know it's going to be okay"? I've said that myself, and most people, when I ask them that question, they say, "Yeah, of course I've said that." Well, if we actually know deep down within us that everything's going to be okay, why aren't we just living deep down? Because there is this place within us where we do know it's going to be okay, no matter what happens. So that's a language that we begin to use together. It's like, what's happening in the deep down for you? Your wisdom knows the next step. It will always tell you what the next step is. Now, it also understands the past and the future, the function of those two things. But it really doesn't concern itself with that. It is in the here and now. That's the other piece, it is here and now, where my body stands, right? So if I say, what's the next step? And I really listen, it will tell me what to do. What's the next step? Just do it. Whatever you hear, do it. You see, the thing is, I've been standing in the grocery store in front of the cheese, right? 'Cause I love cheese. And I've got my headphones on and I'm looking at the cheese. And what's the next step? And I heard dance. So I'm in the grocery store dancing, right? This woman looks at me with this scowl and I smiled at her. Most people wouldn't follow that because we have all these social norms we're supposed to live by, right? This woman absolutely told me that I was not following the social norm. But I smiled because I was following my wisdom and I felt joy when I did that. And so when we follow the next step, we often feel joy. So here and now, and then listen. So when we build this skill of going inward and truly listening, your wisdom is always talking to you. So that is the wisdom model. We will present you with this process, and then we work towards building a relationship with that part of yourself. So thanks for listening.